St. George and the Dragon. We continue our story of St. George and the Dragon as St. George and the princess are traveling across the plain to come to the king's castle. "Now we have come to my own country," said Una. "Be on your guard. Look, there is the city with its bright towers, and my parents are waiting to stand against the brassy scaled dragon. My father and mother are looking out from the walls, and the watchman stands at the top, waiting to call out the good news if help is coming." And there they are traveling toward the castle where the king and the queen live. Then they heard a hideous roar that filled the air with terror. There is the dragon, the great dragon that St. George must defeat. The dreadful dragon lay stretched on the sunny side of a large hill, and when he saw the knight's armor glistening in the sunlight, he came eagerly to do battle. The knight bade his lady stand apart out of danger. She watched the fight while the beast drew near, half flying and half running. His great size made a wide shadow under his huge body, like a mountain casts a shadow over a valley. He reared high, monstrous, horrible, and vast. He had scales of brass fitted so closely that no sword or spear could pierce them. They clashed with every movement. The dragon's wings stretched out like two sails when the wind fills them. The clouds fled before him. His huge long tail, speckled red and black, wound in 100 folds over his scaly back and swept the land behind him for almost half a mile. In his tail's end 2 sharp stings were fixed, but sharper still were his cruel claws. Whatever he touched or drew within those claws was in deadly danger. His head was more hideous than tongue could tell, for his deep jaws gaped wide, showing 3 rows of iron teeth ready to devour his prey. A cloud of smothering smoke and burning sulfur poured from his throat, filling the air. His eyes blazed, flaming with rage, and glared out from deep in his head. So came the night, and the dragon toward the night, raising his speckled breast, clashing his scales as he leaped to greet his newest victim. The knight on horseback fiercely rode at the dragon with all his might and crouched on his spear. But as they passed, the pointed steel glanced off the dragon's hard hide. The wrathful beast, surprised at the strength of the blow, turned quickly and, passing the knight again, brushed him with his long tail so that the horse and the man fell to the ground. Once more the Red Cross Knight mounted and attacked the dragon. Once more in vain. Yet the beast had never felt such a mighty blow from the hand of any man. He was furious for revenge. With his waving wings spread wide, he lifted himself high from the ground, stooped low, and snatched up both horse and man to carry them away. High above the plain, he bore them as far as a bow can shoot an arrow. But even then the knight struggled until the monster was forced to lower his paws so that both horse and rider fell free. The knight's spear glanced off the scaly neck of the dragon, but it pierced the dragon's left wing. and the beast roared like a raging sea in a winter storm. Furious, he snatched up the spear in his claws and broke it off, throwing forth flames of fire from his nostrils. Then he hurled his hideous tail about, wrapped it around the legs of the horse, and striving to loosen the knot, the horse threw its rider to the ground. So the dragon threw the knight down onto the ground, and there he lay unconscious. Where the knight fell, an ancient spring of silvery water bubbled up from the ground. In that cool water the knight lay resting until the sun rose. Then he too rose up again to do battle. And when the dragon saw him, he couldn't believe his eyes. Could this be the same knight that he had thrown down to the ground? Or was there another come to take his place? The knight brandished his bright sword, and it seemed sharper than ever, his hands even stronger. He smote the crested head with a blow so mighty that the dragon reared up like 100 raging lions. His long stinging tail threw down high trees and tore rocks to pieces. Lashing forward, it pierced the knight's shield, and its point stuck fast into his shoulder. He tried to free himself from that barbed sting, but when he saw that his struggles were in vain, he raised his fighting sword and struck a blow that cut off the end of the dragon's tail. Heart cannot think what outrage and what cries, with black smoke and flashing fire, the beast threw forth, turning the whole world to darkness. Gathering himself up, wild for revenge, he fiercely fell upon the sun-bright shield and gripped it fast in his paws. 3 times the knight tried and failed to pull the shield free. Then, laying about him with his trusty sword, he struck so many blows that fire flew from the dragon's coat like sparks from an anvil, and the beast raised one paw to defend himself. Striking with all his might, the knight severed the other paw, which still clung to the shield. Now from the furnace inside himself, the dragon threw huge flames that covered all the heavens with smoke and brimstone. So the knight was forced to retreat to save his body from the scorching flames. Again weary and wounded with his long fight, he fell to the ground. And when gentle Una saw him lying motionless, she trembled with fear and prayed for his safety and healing. But he had fallen beneath a fair apple tree, its spreading branches covered with red fruit, and from that tree dropped a healing dew that the deadly dragon did not dare to come near. Once more the daylight faded and night spread over the earth, and under the apple tree the knight slept and healed. When dawn chased away the dark, a lark mounted up to heaven, and up rose the brave knight with all his hurts and wounds healed, ready to fight again. When the dragon saw him, he began to be afraid. Still he rushed upon the knight, mouth gaping wide open to swallow him whole. And the knight's bright weapon, taking advantage of that open jaw, ran it through with such strength that the dragon fell dead. He breathed his last in smoke and cloud. Like a mountain he fell and lay still. The knight trembled to see his fall, and his dear lady did not dare to come near to thank her faithful knight, until she saw that the dragon would stir no more. And there the dragon lies. He is dead, and the knight is victorious. The watchman on the wall called out to the king and queen, "The dragon is dead! The dragon is dead!" And when the old king saw that it was true, he ordered the castle gates to be opened so that tidings of peace and joy could go out through all the land. Trumpets sounded the news that the great beast had fallen. Then the king and queen came out of the city themselves with all their nobles to meet the Red Cross Knight and his lady. Tall young men led the way, carrying branches to lay at the hero's feet. Pretty girls wore wreaths of flowers and made music on tambourines. The children danced, laughed, and sang with a crown of flowers for Una. They gazed in wonder at the victorious knight. There's all the people laughing, dancing, singing, and praising because the dragon is dead and the knight is victorious. When the people saw that the dead dragon was laying, they dared not come near to touch him. Some ran away, some pretended not to be afraid. One said that the dragon was still alive, but his eyes were just closed. One said he saw fire in his eyes, and another said that the eyes were moving behind their back. When a foolish child ran forward to touch the dragon's claws, his mother scolded him. "How can I tell?" she said. "Those claws might scratch my son or tear his hand." And some of the bolder men began to measure the dragon to prove how many acres his body covered as he lay. The old king embraced and kissed his daughter. He gave gifts of gold and ivory and 1,000 thanks to the dragon slayer. But the knight told the king never to forget the poor people, and he gave the rich gifts back to the king to give to the poor. Then back to the palace everyone went, still singing and dancing, to feast and hear the story of the knight's adventures with Una. And there they are, back at the castle, feasting and happy as they had ever been before. When the tale ended, the king said, "Never did living man sail through such a sea of deadly dangers. Since you are now safely come to shore, stay here, brave knight, and live happily ever after. You have earned your rest." But the brave knight answered, "No, my lord. I have sworn to give knight service to the fairy queen for 6 years. Until then, I cannot rest. I must do my duty." The king said, "I have promised that the dragon slayer should have Una for his wife and be king after I die. If you love each other, my daughter shall be yours now. My kingdom shall be yours when you have done your service for the fairy queen and returned to us." Then he called Una, who came no longer wearing her black cloak, but dressed in a lily-white gown that shimmered like silver. Never had the knight seen